Hello everyone, it's Chris here, aka Omega Actual, and I'm here to say a couple words on Battlefield Hardline. I'm talking about the beta right now, where it's basically open to everyone. Now, this video is going to be playing in the foreground while I talk a little bit about the game. You're going to be seeing a couple of games of heist, which you can basically see. I don't remember whether or not we actually won this or not, but I actually got some good footage here. I got some great footage before, but unfortunately some issues with my microphone prevented me from getting the optimal experience. So I've got the video, but it's not the same, right? So let's talk a little bit about the game right now. Now, Battlefield Hardline is undoubtedly supposed to be a period between where Battlefield 4 and undoubtedly Battlefield 5 is going to come in. Because it's pretty much such a blockbuster series, it's so identifiable in it, the way that it plays and the way that it basically stands out as a game in the shooter genre, it's pretty much inevitable at this point. So I think my theory is that Hardline is supposed to help with that waiting period, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So we have Visceral Games that's developing it, and Visceral Games is, before this, I knew them as developers of Dead Space, which was a fairly good series. Some people don't really like number 3, but it wasn't that big of a problem to me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, especially number 2. Number 2 is my favorite out of the Dead Space series, unless they're willing to actually do some more based on some stuff that you can find in the game, such as patches that make reference to it. Before I go on, I have to say that I really like some of the direction that Visceral is taking this game, and one of the things that really stood out to me is that these are really cool. And the fact that there are hidden reload animations that activate every now and again. It's 1 in a 10,000 chance that they'll actually activate, provided of course you actually do an empty reload, where I've seen people where when they were playing the game, when they were reloading their gun, it's just a hand comes out of the corner of the screen just gripping like a magazine. It's such as like, here you are, sir, another magazine for your rifle, which you can take it and load it right into the weapon. I've never had it happen to me, and it only happens when you do an empty reload. So if you do an attack reload, it doesn't really work. So let's go on to talking about the game itself. Gameplay-wise, this is very familiar to me. Very familiar because this is kind of the way that it played in Battlefield 3, kind of the same it played in Battlefield 4. So going on to Battlefield Hardline was not all that different, to tell the truth. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all, because when you go through it, it's basically kind of muscle memory at this point, where when you play a game and you recognize the way that it plays, it's easier. It allows you to get into it a bit easier than if you're going on with just a brand new gameplay mode. That was over very, very quickly. That was about 3 minutes 4 seconds about. From start to finish there, that was incredibly fast. I don't think I ever had a game complete that quickly. So gameplay-wise is very familiar, but in a way that's kind of a two-lane street in a way. It kind of goes both ways, where, yeah, you can, of course, be familiar with the way that it plays, but at the same time, it doesn't really bring something to the table in some way. It's kind of hard to describe, because this game is different, but at the same time, it's not. And I can't really find the words very much for it, because you figure that Battlefield is Battlefield, right? But when it goes on to a different developer, it takes on a brand new sort of identity. Yes and no. Visceral certainly had their own way of doing things here. When you start it up, it's a weird sort of feeling that it doesn't play exactly like DICE's Battlefield. I mean, for starters, we have a cops and robbers sort of setting here, at least in the beta, where there's a very, very clear focus on police action versus military action, although I don't think you would really know that, considering how much firepower these guys have compared to their military counterparts. It was kind of strange, this sort of setting, and the way that this world sort of reacts. I mean, you play as cops and robbers, but both of these guys have access to a disproportionate amount of firepower. So you see police officers where they have 50 caliber machine guns mounted on helicopters, firing in urban areas no less, which I very much hope were evacuated. Having access to grenade launchers, fragmentation grenades, automatic shotguns. I'm not sure how much of this these toys that actual police forces have in real life. I'm well aware, though, that as SWAT forces, you tend to have a far more diverse armory, because you are basically the special forces of your police department. So if they call you in, you want to put a suspect down, you do it hard. Now, do you do that with mounted machine guns? I seriously don't know if police forces have machine guns. I don't know why police forces would need machine guns, because, well, most criminals wouldn't have machine guns. Most criminals wouldn't, so it's a little bit like overkill. So what I think is that they tend to exaggerate. What Visceral is tending to do is sort of exaggerating this sort of police setting. It's not meant to be an actual realistic sort of depiction of a police department and the arsenal that they're allowed to get into. Because it was part of their plan that they planned to present it in the way of like a television show. And in television show, procedure tends to get exaggerated, if not outright sidestepped, for the sake of moving the story along and for making an entertaining sort of environment. So, no, I don't think it's meant to be a realistic depiction of how police forces actually work. I don't believe that's supposed to be a glorification of a militarized police force, and I don't know why people get so really sort of hung up on that sort of idea. And I think timing sort of plays a whole thing into that, but that's a whole other thing that I'll go into later. Well, actually, I won't go into that later, because that's politics and all that, and it's not good to mix business and pleasure, you know what I mean? So, let's talk a bit more about the game. 3 modes that were released for it, which is the heist mode, which is what you're seeing in this video now. You're seeing a Hotwire mode, and you have your general conquest. I'll start with a more mundane first. You know that Conquest is essentially plays like pretty much any other Battlefield game, where, of course, you go around and you cap things, and the only difference is, instead of fatigues, you're wearing police uniforms. And, well, balaclava, but you were wearing those anyway in the other games. So, that's pretty straightforward. I don't need to explain that. Now, secondly is the Hotwire mode, which is interesting because it kind of plays like Conquest. But the difference, of course, is that instead of fixed points, the modes are actually emphasize movement. And the way they emphasize this movement is that the capture points are cars. Hence the Hotwire mode. And basically you go around the map and you capture these vehicles and you drive them around, and while you're capturing them and while you're driving them, you have to attain a certain speed, first of all, to actually capture the vehicle as a Hotwire objective. And after you get a hold of that, you gain points. You gain points and the enemy loses tickets. The same general rule tends to apply, I think, where you have to gain the majority of the vehicles in order to actually affect their ticket count. At least that's generally what the rule that I operated by when I was playing that game mode. And that's actually interesting because that's kind of a fresh take on it. I don't think I've ever seen like an objective sort of not really a race, but an objective gameplay mode where you're actively moving, where you're actively using vehicles as your capture points. I don't think I've seen that before. And I actually had a surprising amount of fun in that game mode, especially since, that the vehicles are actually much easier to take down than they were in Battlefield 4, because nothing affected the vehicles in Battlefield 4. Half the time you needed heavy armaments to even dent the health. And this time around, because they're civilian vehicles, naturally they aren't as bullet resistant, let us say. But sometimes that you could do some serious damage with grenade launchers, sometimes killing many vehicles in one hit. Now, I don't know how I feel about one hit. Maybe if you have maybe 2 hits. That way it's not too overpowered, and you have people that can generally get out of the way and maybe make gameplay a bit more interesting. Now, lastly, the game mode that you're seeing here is, of course, Heist, or as I like to call it, Battlefield Payday. Now, of course, it's cops and robbers, but you're trying to break into a vault, get the dosh, and get the hell out of Dodge. And it's sort of interesting because, in a way, it kind of reminds me of Rush mixed with Capture the Flag. Of course, Rush, as you know, is in Battlefield tradition, is setting up objectives, setting up explosives and all that, and getting on, progressing to the next stage. Now, this actually takes a fair amount of coordination to do, because there are only 2 objectives, and there are 3 capture points, at least in the beta, at least on this map. And if you fail to capture at one of these points, and a helicopter comes in, of course, to take it away for caching and laundering, whatever have you, whatever criminals do these days, and it will swap up capture points. So if you fail to do something, then you'll be able to go to the other. I hate A. This is A right here. This is the parking structure. And I absolutely loathe going up to this capture point because it's so hard to actively attack. And it's incredibly easy to defend if you're on the side of the police officers. And it doesn't help that it's like on top of a giant parking complex where you have to go up 3-4 flights of stairs. Now, I know, of course, that you have a zip line that you can use to get across from there, but it's a lot of work. And sometimes it's my own personal strategy to actively fail to capture at A, so that now you can have C. And C is in the bottom left corner of the map. It's the easiest to get to. It's right outside the Italian restaurant where you can breach the wall to get the to the vault. And I would personally prefer to do that because it's so close and it's easy enough to get to. You don't need to have any elaborate sort of tricks. Just get down there and just pull your money out of there. Pretty good. But I think that Hotwire is my favorite game mode out of all of them, easily, because it's just brand new. I like the mentality though, like playing it like Payday. Is that you just need to get the drill to work, you need to get the charges. Unfortunately, not nearly as much stealth. It's very actiony. So this gameplay mode doesn't really award tactical decisions as much as it has getting in, running, and gunning. That way you can get your cash out as fast as possible. And speaking of running and gunning, I'd like to talk about the weapons, or some of the changes that they could use. Now, the more expensive a gun is, the more likely it is to totally wreck. And the case in point is the M16A3. This gun is fantastic, and it's horrible because it's pretty much broken to the sense that I think you only need to really put 3 shots on target to take down anyone, pretty much almost at any range. And the recoil is pretty much minimal at best, non-existent at worst. In that you can ping people across maps. You can win against snipers, and I have won against snipers in gunfight duels. And I think it might be best to consider a nerf for final release. Similarly for the AKS-74U, it's that control is absolutely insane. Now, I think it might be best to, well, if you want to have that level of control, maybe you can have that with attachments. And of course have a trade-off for those attachments. But otherwise, these are fairly powerful guns on their own. I know I'm playing with a sniper rifle right here because I wanted to try a close-range bolt-action rifle sort of gameplay style. And it really worked. This is what I was saying about how the weapons control differently. They just feel different. I found myself able to hit targets much better with the sniper rifles in Battlefield Hardline than I have in pretty much any other Battlefield. And I can't explain it, but it just is. It just is. And I don't know if that's just a result of tinkering, or if that's just a result of different coding. Maybe it's the 60 frames per second. Maybe it's the fact that I'm going into it without previous preconceptions of what it's supposed to be. I don't know. That's what it is. So, pretty much, watch the damage on the M16. Watch the damage on the AK-74U. Watch the damage on the grenade launchers, especially against vehicles. I know that's what they excel at, but it's something that perhaps you could consider looking at for the final release. Now, I haven't unlocked all the weapons in the game, but I like the idea of using your experience that you gain to unlock. Your experience, of course, is represented as cash. That's just helpfully brought up there. And the stuff that you accomplish in game, you get cash for. And from that cash, of course, you can buy your unlocks, you can buy your weapons, and you can buy fancy, like, melee things. You can buy, I don't think you can buy new camouflage. I think that's awarded based on points. So, if anything, it's my belief that perhaps it's a hybrid of the traditional Battlefield system, where you get cash and you get experience to rank up, and cash to unlock cool things. And that's the thing, though. That's the thing about the weapons. I think the weapons is pretty much one of the things that I think needs to be looked at the most, because some weapons are undoubtedly better than others. Like, yes, why would I use any other weapon, any other submachine gun, when I already have my MP5K that already is equipped with a suppressor, in which gives the person a bonus because they can't actively be spotted on radar. Whereas I really like to use my Carl Gustav submachine gun simply for the novelty of actually using it in the first place, because it's just exotic as a weapon. You never saw that sort of gun in a video game before Payday or before Battlefield Hardline. At least I don't think so. I don't recall, like, or maybe Project Reality or mods for 1942 that allowed you to use that Swedish submachine gun. But that's just like an example where the MPX is better than the Carl Gustav. It is better than the MP5K. Or how I just unlocked the P90, which is absolutely insane because of its huge magazine size, and again, its nearly non-existent recoil. So, this is really on Visceral to sort of balance out. That's all it is, balancing acts, because technically speaking, the game is very, very good, especially at this point of beta. I don't remember when the release date's supposed to be. Is it in March or something like that? I don't remember exactly. But the game itself is solid. It plays well. I don't recall having any crashes at all, which is great. So it seems like that they really had a lot of time to sort of get it right technically. And that's way better than how Battlefield 4 started out. So I have to give Visceral some credit for that. I mean, getting a game like this, technically speaking, is difficult, especially with the amount of people there. I think there was only like a couple days where the servers were down because so many people were accessing it, but that's pretty much it. Sound-wise, fantastic. I really like the way that the enemies talk to one another, like the whole curse is flying around. It gives like a sort of an authentic sort of experience. Alright, so I've only got a couple more minutes left, so I'm going to be essentially wrapping it up soon. Battlefield Hardline is a game that I think I would look at in the future. I don't know if I would pay the full $60 for it, but if you were to place it at perhaps maybe $40, I would certainly take a look at it. The game itself is well done, especially since it's Visceral's first try at a Battlefield game. It seems to pretty much mirror DICE, if not actually do a little bit better than DICE. I don't know if I would classify this as better than the traditional Battlefield creators. I think I would. I'd like to see a bit more of it. I'd like to see some more weapons. I'd like to see some more videos, some more game types. But it's likely that we're not going to see that until final release at this point. Things feel different. Again, I can't fully explain it, but the way that the movement is, the way that the aiming is, the way that the gun even sways, like how it naturally moves in the screen, these little things, that's all it is, details that really sets it apart. And how Visceral is, of course, acknowledging their own history with things like Dead Space, the Easter eggs, which I really hope they are making a new Dead Space. I'd love to see how the story ends, because after 3, it just was made as a cliffhanger. Don't tease me like that, Visceral. If you're going to do it. Because I might pay for it if it might be good. Think about it, right? But Battlefield Hardline? It's a good break from your general action. Visceral seemed to be more of a third-person shooter sort of thing, and their first foray into the first-person shooter category is surprisingly good. I very much look forward to the release date, whenever that is. And I hope to play it whenever it comes out, and whenever I'm willing to pay the full $60, which I'm pretty sure it will, happen, because EA is the publisher of this game, and as we all know, EA loves their money, pretty much as any other big gaming company likes their money. So, that's my general look at Battlefield Hardline. I'm hoping to put up videos whenever I can. I might post a couple of videos like immediately after this. I might do some more reporting after this. I'll definitely do some more playing after this, because I enjoy playing this game, whenever the beta ends, which might be in like a day or so from now. I don't remember the deadline, but I'll be playing it until they cut off the servers. You know what? That's a sign of a good game to me. Not as good as Halo 5's beta, though, but we're up there. Anyways, thank you guys very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed my words on this. Hopefully maybe you even consider looking at Battlefield Hardline after this. It's an interesting game. Please try it out if you have the beta. If not, wait till release, but please play it. Anyways, thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see y'all in the next video. This is Actual, and I am signing off.